Be careful when you want to keep photos or throw away things from someone who has passed away because they are still around.
In the next few minutes, I'm going to tell you about some of the things that happened in an apartment located in one of the most exclusive areas of Buenos Aires. I'm talking about Puerto Madero. Surely no one would ever imagine that in these luxurious and new apartments, paranormal things happen. It's really something that catches your attention, and I'd like you to tell me, what do you think about everything that happened? Because the trigger for all this paranormal activity was something that you surely have at home, and you can't imagine that it somehow attracts some energies that might be disturbing. Send your experience to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Length and quantity don't matter. Add photos, videos, or other media to make your story comprehensive. Then I'll review all this material, and if I have any questions, I'll be contacting you. And let me tell you that we're now taking new orders in the store. For exclusive channel offers, request a catalog anytime through the WhatsApp number on the screen. No obligation. Check out the products and designs available for every taste. And honestly, each one is more beautiful than the last. Friends, we're starting this new video right now. Enjoy it.
I've been listening to your channel for a while. I don't miss a single story. I've listened to almost all of them. But the one I'm about to tell is quite different from what people usually tell you. I haven't heard anything like it, but well, it will also help other people who go through the same situation, because it's something common when someone dies that you always end up keeping something.
To begin, we have to go back to the year 2014 when my father-in-law died in his apartment while still in the company of his wife. They were both very old. My father-in-law was 90 years old and my mother-in-law passed away a few months later. Her health began to decline very quickly, and of course her spirits did as well. After several visits to the doctors, she was hospitalized until inevitably she also passed away. After some time we started taking care of the apartment that had been left empty. Most of the clothes were donated, some furniture as well, and finally the apartment was free and empty. Among the various things we brought home, my husband found a box with a lot of photos in it. Although most of them were black and white, there were some that were even older, even in sepia, which I understand are extremely old, and so on. Needless to say, most of the people who appeared there were not known to us, not even to my husband. There were photos of my mother-in-law's relatives, of her parents, her grandparents, her friends. And considering that we were talking about a 91-year-old person, we realized how old those pictures were. That day when my husband brought that box, we started looking at them one by one, without imagining what would happen. We were in our apartment, located, as I said at the beginning, in Puerto Madero. It was a brand new place, never lived in before. And with this, I want to make it clear that no one else had ever lived in this apartment before us. In other words, there was no prior history.
These photos, this box from my mother-in-law, which were two boxes, like a big cardboard box and a box like a shoebox. I started to sort them. I asked my husband, what should I do with the photos? I began sorting them, giving one part to my brother and keeping the other part for myself. Well, photos from when he was a child, a huge amount of photo. I grabbed the package and asked him if he knew who the old man was. No idea. Isn't this old man your grandfather? I have no idea. Well, I grabbed and made a bundle with all the sepia photos, which were a lot, and the photo of this old man with a mean face. So I left that bundle in a room where we had the computer and one of those long tables for flat screen TVs. I left the bundle there as if I was going to throw it in the trash. Then I went to the other room where my little boy was to help him take a bath since he was young. And I heard a loud noise. And my husband came and said to me, what was that you put in the bundle that fell and almost exploded? I said to him, what bundle? The bundle you left there on the television table?
I want to point out that the noise really sounded like an explosion, and there's no way it would sound like that just from falling to the floor. Leaving aside that it was something inexplicable that it fell all by itself just because it was resting on the table without anyone touching it. And we only thought about this much later. I was left without knowing what to say because the package only had the photos we set aside. There were just a few of those people, we had no idea who they were. But I didn't think much about it. I just grabbed it and threw it in the service room to go out with the trash. From that very moment, everything started because the apartment, which had been a peaceful, quiet place in every way, started to become something different. The first thing was starting to hear noises like someone, for example, coming into the main room. But you would go and there was no one there. You could hear footsteps, you could hear banging, and even voices in the rooms without there being absolutely anyone there. At first we thought it was the neighbors from the floor above, but we realized that this was impossible because it was a very quiet family. We never had any issues with them, neither due to noise nor any other specific reason. But the scariest thing was realizing that all these noises were around us, in practically every corner of our home. And no matter how hard we tried to figure it out, these noises were being made by something we couldn't see. For example, once I was in the bedroom watching television. My husband had gone out to dinner with his children from his previous marriage, so I was completely alone. Then I heard someone open the apartment door, come in, close it, and start walking toward the bedrooms down the main hallway. But just before reaching, the footsteps stopped. I was listening to this and the whole time I thought it was my husband. So I said his name out loud, asking if everything had gone well at dinner. But he didn't answer. I got up, checked everything, and found myself completely alone, staring at the front door, which had never been opened. And my husband, of course, never arrived.
I said someone came in. I started looking around. I turned on all the lights in the whole apartment, in the bedrooms. I went to check on my little girl. She was asleep. Well, there was no one. I checked all 4 bathrooms, no one.
We have a housekeeper. She's been working in our home for years. We developed an excellent relationship with a great deal of trust. And it was her who, during these weeks when everything was happening, came to me and wanted to talk seriously with me about something that was going on and was worrying her. I want to make it clear that she had no idea about all of this that we had been noticing for weeks. So her comment was very valuable because it confirmed to us that everything we had been thinking was real. She told me right away that she was finding it difficult to work comfortably because she knew the department perfectly. She was encountering situations that were scaring her. Mainly, it was due to the noises and voices that came out of nowhere. She told me in detail about each of the things that had happened to her, and interestingly, they matched exactly with what we had been going through. The good news about this was that we weren't crazy, but the bad news was that we had no idea why something like this was happening in our house. In fact, we were never people interested in esoteric topics, in paranormal things. We're not even religious people. So, as you can imagine, we were completely bewildered. And today, coincidentally, I'm sharing this because I was trying to look up more about all this on the internet, looking for answers. In general, I came across the channel, I learned about many testimonies in the different videos this way, and I decided that our experiences also needed to be known. The two of us talked for a long time about all of this. I, in any case, and I'm being honest about this, tried to keep a more rational stance, saying that maybe it was noises from outside, or maybe the neighbors had guests and they were the ones making all this noise. But no, she was very sure, and she was absolutely right. She had made the decision to talk to me because the previous afternoon we had gone out. She was left alone in the apartment, and all of a sudden she started hearing noises, very loud noises of all kinds in the living room. This wasn't the first time, but now it was incredibly intense. She looked out but saw no one. She checked the whole house, and these noises seemed to be everywhere. They were all around her, but mainly coming from the hallway. A detail that is not minor and makes all the difference in this whole story. She was so scared that she locked herself in the kitchen because it was the only place where there was some peace. That afternoon, we spent a long time talking about all this and analyzing point by point why it was happening. It was in those moments that I remembered the photos from that box we brought. It was the only new thing in the house, and coincidentally, it matched the moment when everything started. She told me that her sister knew a santera, a psychic or something like that, and that, from what she knew, she was a woman who worked in a very serious and responsible way. So we agreed that she would ask her and find out if she could get involved, at least to give her opinion. That's how a week later we got in touch with this woman and her, after hearing everything that had happened, learning about the photos and some more details. She told us that most likely, though she wasn't completely sure from her point of view, we had disturbed a dead person. Said, according to her in this way, to understand it quickly, it could be my mother-in-law who owned these photos. Let's remember that some of them ended up in the trash, but it could also be someone else who was attached or connected to these photos. Because many times we don't know. But some objects can be the refuge of certain energies, and when someone tries to violate their place, they get angry and react accordingly. Possibly this was what was happening because photos are a very strong connection with deceased people, whether we knew them or not. An important detail that I didn't mention is that during all these months, different things in the apartment kept breaking in completely ridiculous ways. From electronic devices to decorations, pictures, glasses, plates, and every time it happened completely on its own, without anyone touching anything and witnessing the scene right in front of us. For example, on one occasion I was in the kitchen and a glass lid flew a couple of meters in front of me, shattering completely. This was, as you can imagine, totally inexplicable. Days later, with the help of that santera, the house was cleansed and smudged, which was quite complicated because we had to try not to set off the fire alarms, and with great conviction, we asked these entities to leave us in peace. We also had to apologize to them if we did anything wrong and be clear about something. That they were not welcome in the house, basically that they had to leave right then and there. We repeated this several times every few days, and believe it or not, everything started to calm down, but it wasn't the end because everything continued.
Everything was pretty calm. All the years that passed after, until 2023, when things started again. Every now and then, I would light incense herbs, but I started to feel it again. I heard some strange noises, and it wasn't just that. I had 2 really bad sleep paralysis episodes, which I now realize were sleep paralysis because I had no idea what sleep paralysis was until I started listening to you and people talked about it. I was sleeping in my bed with my husband next to me, and I felt someone lie down against my back and snuggle up. I was so panicked, I didn't open my eyes, I couldn't move. I tried to move my body until little by little from the panic that took over me, I started to move and I was able to move and this thing disappeared.
It happened to me a second time, just as terrifying as the first. Now, after searching for information in many places, I understood that sleep paralysis is not always linked to paranormal events, no matter how real they may seem. What we see, what we feel, what we hear, many times are nothing more than creations of our own brain. Even when we're awake, it's still in a state similar to dreaming, causing extremely realistic hallucinations. But considering what we had been going through at home, it was impossible not to associate everything with the same thing. And my question is, were these paralysis episodes related to the entities that harassed us, or was it just a coincidence? After a while, I looked for help again because things kept happening and every day it seemed to get worse. It seemed to get much more intense. And finally, I found a tarot reader who told me some interesting things.
I'll verify their identity for you. They're your in-laws. Ask them to leave. Light a white candle until it burns out. Ask them. Sorry, because they, know that you're very perceptive and you felt it. So, they're kind of upset. But ask them, apologize again, and tell them to move on. I did that, but not just that. I went to the Buenos Aires Cathedral. I went in. I was overcome with desperation, and I said, well, God, I don't usually come to church. I'm not very Catholic, but help me. I don't know what to do, and I don't know why. I don't know how. I felt a wave of sadness, and I walked over to the place where they sold holy cards and bracelets, and I said, well, I have to take something with me. I ended up choosing a bracelet without knowing who it was for, but it looked like a saint. I said, let's see, I'll take this bracelet without knowing why. When I got home and examined it closely, besides the little cross, it had Saint Benedict, exactly Saint Benedict, who is the saint against all evil. And I started to study his story more in depth, and I wore that bracelet to sleep. I think for 2 or 3 months I didn't take it off, but not even to take a shower. And well, that's when things started to calm down, and I was able to live pretty peacefully. So that was my story. Be careful when you want to keep photos or throw away things that belong to someone who passed away, because they are there, the energy is there, and they see us, they feel us.